Genesis 45, verse 1 says, Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him and cried, Have everyone go out from me. So there was no man with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. Now Judah had just finished his impassioned speech in the last chapter concerning his father and his younger brother Benjamin. He offered to take the place of his brother and to be Joseph's servant forever. Now, Joseph here was overcome with emotion. Verses 2 and 3. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. I'm sure they were. But Joseph wept so loudly, the Egyptians could hear it nearby. The emotions that he had, he was just overcome with those emotions. And he asked about his father, but, the brothers couldn't answer. They were kind of flabbergasted. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Because it never even crossed their mind that this could be Joseph, or that even Joseph was alive. Verses 4 and 5. Then Joseph said to his brothers, Please come closer to me. And they came closer, and he said, I'm your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. Now, the thing that gets me here with Joseph is the great amount of maturity he's handling this. He tells his brothers, don't be angry with yourselves. He knows that Elohim set this all up intentionally in order to preserve life. Think about what would have happened if his brothers didn't sell him into slavery. Then the famine would have destroyed most of the people in the world. That's what would have happened. It's all part of an intricate plan to save people on earth, especially the promised line to Messiah. Verse 6, For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there'll be neither plowing nor harvesting. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve you for a remnant in the earth and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now therefore it was not you who sent me here, but Elohim. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and master of all his household and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Now the famine was only 2 years into a 7-year life. There's still 5 more years where there won't be any plowing, there won't be any harvesting, and life is going to be tough. Elohim sent Joseph, he says, as a father to Pharaoh and to be ruler throughout Egypt. So what happened was Pharaoh was just listening to Joseph. He was pretty much in charge. Verse 9, Hurry and go to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, Elohim has made me master of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. And you shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me. You and your children and your children's children and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, lest you and your household and all that you have be impoverished. No sense in the family traveling back and forth all the time. It's going to be years. So the length of the route here shown is about that they'd have to travel about 350 miles. Now, yeah, Tom?
What do you mean all you will have will be impoverished? That means
Go broke. Everything, you'll lose everything.
Is that what he's saying?
What?
If they don't come?
Yeah, you'll stay in that land and you won't have any food for 5 years. So you'll lose everything. So that's 350 miles. So how many times do you want to make that trip on a camel or on a donkey or on foot? I don't want to do it in my car either. And I've got a good air conditioner. So, no, He says, everybody, come on to Egypt. This was prophesied to Abraham. In Genesis 15, verse 13, and Elohim said to Abram, Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they will be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. Verse 12 of Genesis 45. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. So he tells them, listen to him speaking in Hebrew now. Compare his eyes with the eyes of his younger brother, Benjamin. That's the only one who's not a half-brother. They're full brothers. They can be certain that he is who he says he is. Verse 13, now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you've seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and afterward his brothers talked with him. Now, up to this point, the brothers, they didn't say a word. I don't think they could talk. They certainly didn't know what to say. They were dumbfounded. And Joseph, he kissed all his brothers. He wept over them. Verse 16, now, when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brothers had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this. Load your beasts and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. So word got to Pharaoh that Joseph's brothers had arrived, and Pharaoh was pretty excited for him. Pharaoh treated them like part of his own family, just like he did Joseph. Verse 19, now you are ordered, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. And do not concern yourselves with your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Well, Pharaoh told them to take carts with them, Egyptian carts. He would recognize them apparently, so they can bring everyone back. And he told them, don't bring any goods back. They can have the best in all the land of Egypt when they get in. Verse 21, then the sons of Israel did so. And Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. So here we go. Yeah, well, Benjamin's the favorite now. And it's, once again, I think a test for the brothers. Pharaoh gave them everything from the best of Egypt. So the clothing they had was the good stuff. You know, it was tailored. It wasn't off-the-rack stuff. It was the good stuff. And their return in elaborate Egyptian clothing would help demonstrate this truth to the father, also to Jacob. Verse 23, and to his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and sustenance for his father on the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on your journey. Well, Pharaoh sent provisions that were more than adequate, a lot more than they needed. And Joseph, he commanded them, do not argue on the way. Well, now, why would they argue? No, we know what they were going to argue about? I could picture it. I told you we shouldn't have sold him into slavery, but you wouldn't listen to me. No, you said to sell him into slavery. No, I didn't. You did. I tried to stop you. At least I thought I tried to stop you. You know that's what's going to happen. Now, brothers are. They're going to punch each other in the nose. And he said, don't. Yeah. To prove to Jacob that that everything happened according to what he said. Yeah. Yeah, this is it. You know, he knows how old his father is. And he knows that his father had been in despair for years and was just sure that he's gone. So he's got to convince him. Verse 25, then they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, saying, Joseph is alive, and indeed he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. But he was stunned, for he did not believe them, and who can blame him? That is very understandable. Verses 27 and 28, when they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. See, Jacob is not concerned with the power and status of Joseph. All he wants to do is see him alive once again. He's not concerned with relocating. He just wants to see his son one time again before he dies. Chapter 46, verse 1, so Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the Elohim of his father Isaac. Now, Beersheba, a very prominent place in Genesis thus far. It's the place where Abraham and Abimelech swore an oath. It's where Isaac and Abimelech swore an oath. Jacob and Esau met there also. And Israel, Jacob now offers sacrifices there. And apparently that's the place that Elohim designated for him to do so at that time. Now keep in mind, that's what's important about offerings. You have to do them only in the place where he designates. And apparently he designated that. That's why we don't do them today. The place he last designated is occupied. We can't do them. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, you wouldn't do offerings. Would you? You wouldn't do sacrifices, would you? That's horrible. Well, no, it's not. What would be horrible about that? Well, barbecue?
No, they're spoiled. They're used to somebody else sacrificing the animal, then they eat it.
They're used to somebody else sacrificing animals so they can eat at McDonald's, right? That's the truth. But the offerings were a fellowship thing with the Father. And they're going to be back. When he comes back, those are going to be done again. They will be done again. It says it plainly in many parts of Scripture. In Ezekiel chapters 40 through 48, it talks about the prince is going to do offerings in the temple, which will be in that day. By the way, if people tell you in prophecy there's going to be a third temple before Jesus comes back, well, no, there won't be, okay? There won't be. There won't be another temple until he does return, until after he returns. Nothing in Scripture says there'll be another temple. There's no indication at all that there will be one. Verse 2. So Elohim spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And he said, I am Elohim, the Elohim of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I'll go down with you to Egypt. I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will close your eyes. Well, Elohim came to Israel in a vision, told him to go to Egypt, and there he's going to make a great nation out of him. Elohim states, he said, that he'll be with him. And it'll be there that Jacob will die, and Joseph will be by his side, and Joseph will be the one that closes his eyes. Verse 5. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And they took their livestock and their property which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his grandsons with him, his daughters and his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Now, it probably wasn't until the vision that Israel had that he decided to relocate to Egypt. Elohim told him to do that. Now the whole family is going to make the trip. Verse 8. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel. Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. And the sons of Reuben, Hanok and Palu, Hezron and Carmi. And the sons of Simeon, Yemuel and Yamin, Ohad, Yakin, and Zohar and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. And the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Now the sons and their descendants are listed according to their mothers here, and we're going to go down through the list just because we don't skip anything. Almost don't skip anything. Verse 12, and the sons of Judah, and Onan and Shelah and Perez and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. Remember how they died? They what? They offered strange fire. Yeah, offered strange fire. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. And actually, no, and Onan. I believe they died when they married that woman. You're thinking the sons of Levi. Those were the sons of Aaron that died. That's later. Those are the ones that married the woman, you remember? And then the guy died, and then Judah gave him the son, and then that son died. Okay? Yeah, that's a weird story. Yeah. The strange fire comes later after they get to the land. Yeah, that's a story about the goat. Yes. Did I go a little elaborate in the goat story? I wanted that truth to come out. Now, Samson was brilliant. And the sons of Issachar, Tola and Puvah and Yob and Shimron, and the sons of Zebulun, Sered and Elam and Yaleel. And the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, with his daughter Dinah, all his sons and his daughters, numbered 33. So these are the sons of Leah. The entire number of that clan that came from her, there were 33 of them. Don't have families that big much anymore, do we? Verse 16, and the sons of Gad, Ziphion and Haggai, and Shuni and Esbon and Eri and Arodi and Areli. And the sons of Asher, Imnah and Ishva and Ishvi and Beriah and her sister Sirah. And the sons of Beriah, Heber and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Leah, and she bore to Jacob these 16 persons. So that clan from Zilpah, there's 16 of them. Verse 19, the sons of Jacob's wife Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. Now to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela and Betcher and Ashbel, and Gera and Naaman, Ahi and Rosh, Bapim, Hupim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob. There were 14 persons in all. So, yeah, if y'all you got kids on the way, look in Genesis 46 for some names. Okay? So 14 from Rachel. Ard, yeah. Verse 23, and the sons of Dan, Hushim, and the sons of Naphtali, Yazeel, Guni, Yazir, and Shelam. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Rachel. And she bore these to Jacob. There were 7 persons in all. So that's how many were from Bilhah, were 7. Verse 26, all the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his direct descendants, not including the wives of Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2. And all the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70. So there were 66 people that came from the body of Jacob here, plus the wives of the sons of Jacob. And if you add Jacob, Joseph, and Joseph's 2 sons, that makes 70. Verse 28, now he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out the way before him to Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. And Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a long time. So Jacob sent Judah ahead so Joseph could meet them part way, and then Joseph wept on his neck for a long time. Verse 30, then Israel said to Joseph, now let me die, since I've seen your face that you're still alive. And Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they've been keepers of livestock. And they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. This is a tender moment here in the book of Genesis. Jacob is so happy. He's ready to die now. He's sufficient with that now. And Joseph, he's giving them instructions on what to say to Pharaoh. Pharaoh, he's going to treat them like family, okay? And likely what he's going to say, stay in my palace. Okay? Stay here. You'll be royalty like your brother Joseph is. And Joseph didn't want that for him. He did not want that for them. That's where the paganism was. That's where the gods were. He didn't want his family to be that close to that. So he's telling them what to say, and in a way to say it that's not going to insult Pharaoh. Very important. Verse 33, and it shall come about when Pharaoh calls you and says, what's your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, that you may live in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians. Now, the Nile Delta was cattle country. Goshen was in the eastern Delta region. Joseph wants them to mention their shepherding, but emphasize that they raise cattle. The land of Goshen will be perfect for them since they could stay culturally and also spiritually separated from pagan Egypt. And that was the plan. Verses 1 and 2 of Genesis 47. Then Joseph went in and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brothers and their flocks and their herds and all that they have come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they're in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Now Joseph is going to help them speak to Pharaoh. I don't think that they were aware how to properly speak to the leader of the world, okay? He loves his brothers, but I don't think he has confidence in their judgment. They haven't displayed much so far.
Judgment's pretty lousy so far.
Pretty lousy judgment so far, yep. With all the bad things that they've done, the wrong things that they've done, is it safe to assume they could say the wrong thing too? Oh, yeah. Pretty safe to say, yes. Verse 3, then Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? So they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn in the land, for there's no pasture for your servants' flocks. For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants live in the land of Goshen. Well, they want to dwell in the land of Goshen. Once again, he doesn't want them to stay in the palace of Pharaoh. He doesn't want them in the heart of Egypt at all, okay? Going to go out to these pasture lands. He knows that his father and brothers have a much bigger part of a much bigger plan. They're not to become too acquainted with this idea of staying in Egypt. Now, they were to be strangers in the land of Egypt. That's why they were separate. They stayed apart. They were not to be residents of the land. When we read Genesis 15, verse 13, and Elohim said to Abram, know for certain your descendants will be strangers in a land that's not theirs. What did Pharaoh want to do? No, be one of us. Come here. Give me a hug. Let me show you how us Egyptians do it. That's what he was probably wanting to do. And Joseph was going to prevent that from happening. You're going to be strangers in this land. That's not the land you're supposed to stay in. The awareness of the fact that they were to be strangers in the land of Egypt, it's ingrained in Torah. In Genesis 22, verse 21, you shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. They were supposed to be strangers in the land of Egypt. Exodus 23, verse 9, and you shall not oppress a stranger, since you yourselves know the feelings of a stranger, for you also were strangers in the land of Egypt. It would appear that was one of the main reasons that Elohim had Israel enslaved for 400 years or so, was that they would know how to treat the stranger among them. And we need to know how to treat the stranger among us. In Leviticus 19, verses 33 and 34, when a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. Now, who's considered the stranger? Who's the stranger? What's the Hebrew word? Ger. Yeah. Yeah. What is a ger? That's someone seeking to be a part of Israel. Okay? That's not someone with a bomb strapped to his back that's getting on the bus with your kids. No, that's not a ger. A stranger is one who wants to be a part of the people. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Deuteronomy 10, starting at verse 19. So show your love for the alien. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. You shall fear Yahweh, your Elohim. You shall serve him and cling to him, and you shall swear by his name. He is your praise, and he is your Elohim, who has done these great and awesome things for you, which your eyes have seen. Your fathers went down to Egypt, 70 persons in all, and now Yahweh, your Elohim, has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven. Israel is to remain set apart from the world and for the work of Elohim. That's the only way we can do the work of Elohim, is to be set apart from the world. It's the only way. They can't be a part of Egypt. They can't become Egyptians. Remember, that's one of the themes of Paul's letters, too. Stay who you are, okay? Be who you are, but be obedient to the Father. Yeah.
It says the stranger, when we were talking about the strangers among you are people that want to worship Elohim.
Yes.
And those are the only strangers that you consider strangers in the land that you be nice to, right?
Well, I wouldn't say you be nice to everybody to a degree, but yeah, those are the ones you go out of your way to be like one of us, okay? To be one of you. Verses 5 and 6 of Genesis 47. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is at your disposal. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know any capable men among them, then put them in charge of my livestock. Pharaoh speaks directly to Joseph now. He's not talking to the brothers. As a matter of fact, he talks as if they aren't even there. It's as if he's granting Joseph here a special favor. And it's interesting that Pharaoh suggested that any among them who are competent could be a chief herdsman over his livestock. Now, this office is mentioned frequently in Egyptian inscriptions, since the king possessed vast herds of cattle. Ramses III is said to have employed 3,264 men, mostly foreigners, to care for the royal herds. For them to be officers of the crown grants them legal protection not usually given to aliens. Verse 7. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many years have you lived? So Jacob said to Pharaoh, the years of my sojourning are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, nor have they attained the years that my fathers lived during the days of their sojourning. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. Well, here's the interesting thing. Jacob shows up there. Pharaoh's an Egyptian. Okay, and we know, by the way, that the Egyptians, there were a lot of mummified remains of Egyptians from back in that day. A lot of them. And through x-rays and other things, Dr. Russell was talking about that in his book, what the Bible says about healthy living. They suffered from the same things that we suffer from today. Whether it's all kinds of disorders due to poor health, short lives, lack of nutrition. Because what did they eat as Egyptians? Unclean things. Okay? Suffered from the same cancers and malignancies that we have today. So no one lived to be near 130. Okay? So this 130-year-old man comes up to Pharaoh. Pharaoh looks at him and says, how old are you? He had never seen anything like that. Pharaoh, I think he was marveling at the longevity of the old man. And Jacob informs Pharaoh, you know, I haven't lived near as long as my dad and my grandpa. Isaac lived to be 180. Abraham lived to be 175. So, and he says his years actually have been few compared to his grandma, or his dad and his grandpa, and most of his years have been unpleasant. Okay, I mean, he spent a good part of his life getting swindled by his uncle Laban. He spent a good part of his life running from his brother he knew that wanted to kill him, bite him on the neck till he was dead. He spent how many of his years now mourning the death of his favorite son? He hasn't had that many good days, okay? At least that's how he sees it. And we don't know anything about the blessing he gave Pharaoh, but we just know that he did. Verses 11 and 12. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had ordered. And Joseph provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food according to their little ones. According to their little ones. In other words, he provided food according to the size of their families. Each family was fed as much as they could handle. Verse 13, now there's no food in all the land because the famine was very severe. So that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. The famine was horrible. So Joseph gathered up all the money that was in Egypt, all the money that was in Canaan, because of the food he sold. What good is your money if you don't have any food? You can't eat it. You can, but you won't like it. Everyone in Egypt was now broke, except for Pharaoh and his household. He had all the money in Egypt. Joseph kept none of the money. He gave it all to Pharaoh. Verse 15, when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us food, for why should we die in your presence? For our money's gone. Then Joseph said, give up your livestock. And I'll give you food for your livestock, since your money's gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses and the flocks and the herds and the donkeys. And he fed them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. So during this time, the people are becoming wards of the state. They're depending on the government for their survival. That's a dangerous position. Well, we're not really told at this point how far into the famine they are. Yeah, they're running out of things to... Yep. All their money, their precious things, their livestock, everything's being traded in.
Why didn't they eat their livestock?
Well, if they're all going to die because they can't eat, you're not going to eat for very long on that livestock. If you can't give them water, what are you going to do? So, here, I got a question. Why didn't Joseph hand the food out to the people instead of making the people pay for it with the very last of their possessions? Why did he do that? That comes later. That's correct. Yeah, I'm not supposed to read ahead. Not allowed to read your Bible, Cliff. Don't do that. Don't do that. So he continues here. Verse 18. And when that year was ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, we'll not hide from my master that our money is all spent. The cattle are my master's. There's nothing left for my master except our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for food, and we and our land will be slaves to Pharaoh. So give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every Egyptian sold his field because the famine was severe upon them. Thus the land became Pharaoh's. Pharaoh got it all. He owned all the money, all the livestock, all the land. You know, it might be sound cruel to have it done this way, but I'll tell you exactly why he did it the way he did it. Well, oh my gosh, you people, you're starving. You got to eat. It's a horrible thing. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to give everybody some food. Okay? Everybody come and get some food. Take it home with you. And if you need some more, come back and get some more. We got quite a bit. Why did he do that? Did he just have to demand that that Pharaoh own everything? Is that what he was doing? What? Absolutely. They'd have been wasteful with it. Food wouldn't have lasted 7 years. You can't give away that stuff. Okay, you start just handing it out and you got a limited supply. Well, shoot, I might be real hungry tomorrow, so I better grab a whole lot of this. And then you don't take care of it. I can go get some more, can I? Well, if it's all free, you can.
Isn't there something kind of psyche that if you pay for something, it's more worth it?
If you pay for it, it has worth to it. And you're gonna treasure it because you have to.
And you appreciate it more, right?
You appreciate it. That's exactly right. Yeah. Those are high prices to pay, but it was the only way to make sure that amount they had stored up was going to last that 7 years. The only way to do it. Verses 21 and 22. And as for the people, he removed them to the cities from one end of Egypt's border to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they lived off the allotment which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Pharaoh saw that the priests were well taken care of. Everyone else moved into the cities because it's easier to take care of masses that way. In an urban area, you can control the masses better as opposed to a rural one.
Were they Pharaoh's priests or Elohim?
Those are Pharaoh's priests, yeah. And, okay, why live in a rural setting if you can't harvest and can't plant anything anyway? Because there's no rain. There's no water. So bring them all in an urban setting. That way you can deal with the people much better. See, look at the wisdom that Elohim gave Joseph in dealing with this situation. Just outstanding. Verse 23, then Joseph said to the people, behold, I have today bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you may sow the land. And at the harvest you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own for seed of the field, and for your food, and for those of your households, and as food for your little ones. And they said, you have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my master, and we will be Pharaoh's slaves. So Joseph probably gave them this seed in order to sow the land, and that means the famine must be coming to an end soon by this time. After Pharaoh owned all the money, all the livestock, all the land, and all the people. Verse 26, and Joseph made the statute concerning the land of Egypt, valid to this day, that Pharaoh should have the fifth. Only the land of the priests did not become Pharaoh's. Now Israel lived in the land of Egypt in Goshen, and they acquired property in it, and were fruitful, and became very numerous. The people were to be taxed from now on in the land of Egypt. 20%, 1/5 of all they grew, went to Pharaoh, and the rest they could keep for themselves. And that was the law from that period forward. Verse 28, and Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time for Israel to die drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, please, if I found favor in your sight, place now your hand under my thigh and deal with me in kindness and faithfulness. Please do not bury me in Egypt. Now Jacob, he lived in Egypt 17 years. And that's precisely the amount of time Joseph stayed in Canaan with his father. Now, the lifespans of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, what they do, they show us that Elohim is not haphazard in his way of doing things. Even if it takes his time to see it, he's not haphazard about things. Abraham lived 175 years. Okay? 175, that's 5 times 5 times 7. Isaac lived 180 years. That's 6 times 6 times 5. Jacob lived 147 years, which is 7 times 7 times 3. So let me just put this up here. Just a little pattern here, which is very interesting. Don't need to pray about it, but I'll put it on the prayer list. Okay, we had Abraham, and he lived 175. That's 5 times 5 times 7. And then we had Isaac. He lived to be 180. And that's 6 times 5. And then we had Jacob, or Israel, and he lived to be 149, which is 7 times 7 times 3. The interesting thing about this, the square increases by 1 each generation, and the multiplier at the end decreases by 2 after every generation. Just thought that was interesting. Call me a crazy math guy. But you see the resemblance of order in this. Very interesting, at least in my mind. And once again, the oath is made in the manner of, that is symbolic of the seed. And when it says, and if you weren't here earlier when we went through these, when it says, place your hand under my thigh, it's not his thigh, okay? It's, let's say, the procreative part is what he's talking about. So what you're doing is you're making an oath for the generations, okay? We don't do things much that way nowadays, but hey, maybe we don't know what we're doing. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Oops, that was my mistake. Yes, well, thank you. Wait a minute, you're right. You're right. I was getting ahead of myself here. Yep, that's 49 times 3. Yep. See, 147 years, verse 28. I just wrote the wrong number. I was thinking of the math ahead of the number that I wrote. Verse 30, but when I lie down with my fathers, you shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I will do as you have said. And he said, swear to me. So he swore to him. Then Israel bowed and worshiped at the head of the bed. So Joseph promises to bury his father in the land given to them by Elohim. Any questions on that section in Genesis?